All right, this is Openstax U.S. History, Chapter 20, Section 3, Farmers' Revolt in the Populist Era. So during the Gilded Age in particular, farmers faced a unique set of circumstances. So Gilded Age is 1870 to 1900. And these challenges will lead to a significant political change in the country. So of the various difficulties that farmers endured, including just those that were pretty much basic to the lifestyle for farmers, especially those out west. This is a picture of I believe a North Dakota farm family living in a sod or mud house, which many farmers in the West did. They had other problems that were related to politics and the changes in the economy. One was the dropping crop prices. Again, for farmers, if you're selling crops, that is a bad thing because you want to sell at a very high price. So dropping crop prices, which were for a number of reasons, including improved technological development and improved transportation, which then drop the prices of various crops, meant that there were lower incomes for farmers. Tariffs, which are taxes on imported goods. Now recall from the last chapter that during the Gilded Age, the United States had the highest tariffs in pretty much all of its history, and that tariffs were favored by businesses because it allowed businesses to charge extra money when faced with foreign competition. So taxes on imported goods really meant more expensive tools, right? Tools and machines, so tractors, shovels, everything that was needed for farmers, irrigation, those things were more expensive thanks to tariffs. You couldn't buy cheap foreign goods because they were taxed, right, at this high rate. Also foreign competition with crops. Again, this just has to do with some of the improvements in transportation. So farmers in the U.S. are also competing with farmers around the world. Banks and railroads especially, these were probably the two most difficult things. Banks essentially could charge farmers high interest rates. Oops. And even though, and this is, asked us to recall some of the content that we learned in the previous chapters, remember things like the Homestead Act, which made land very cheap and available and sometimes free for farmers, is that you still needed to buy all the tools and everything else, the seeds, the fertilizer that was required. And so typically farmers took out loans, and those loans were provided by the banks. And so banks could charge pretty much farmers whatever they wanted to. Railroads, the same thing. Railroads price gouged. If you're a farmer and you grow your crop, you have to pay the railroad in order to transport it. And the railroad companies and the banks were the two biggest, or some of the two biggest corporations and industries in the United States, and more or less took advantage of the position that farmers were in. When it came to the monetary system, right, farmers favored the silver position. Of course, when it came to the monetary system, the debate over gold and silver was, should silver be included with gold as backing currency? Banks and businesses wanted only gold to count. Farmers wanted silver and gold, because what that meant was that there would be more money available. Banks wouldn't be able to charge as high interest rates if there was more money available. So all of these things are problems facing farmers, particularly in the Gilded Age. So how do farmers then begin to organize? Well, very much in a similar manner that workers did, is that farmers begin to form organizations. The Grange or Grangers were like unions for farmers. So these were organizations that came together, farmers came together and were able to have more strength in numbers in order to get, for example, things like Granger Laws passed. Granger Laws were typically laws which regulated, in this case, railroads, right? So these were laws really designed, these were laws that were designed to fix this problem of price gouging that the railroad companies often did. They were more often state laws, so these were local. However, the Granger Laws went before the Supreme Court in the Wabash case. So this was, are the Granger Laws constitutional? What the Supreme Court ruled was that Granger Laws were unconstitutional, right? This is a serious blow or serious negative impact. So this was a blow to farmers. Essentially, the Supreme Court had ruled that railroads have the right to charge pretty much whatever price they want, and any state law that tried to regulate or tell them what they could and could not charge was struck down by the Supreme Court. Farmers went on to create a minor political party called the Greenback Party. Of course, Greenback is a reference to the U.S. currency or dollar, right? And of course, this is the idea regarding the monetary system, that you should expand, you should allow for more money to be in circulation. Greenbacks being paper dollars. To have more of these paper dollars in circulation meant that farmers could get their hands on the desperate loans that they needed. And other organizations called farmers' alliances also created that, certainly by the 1870s, 1880s, and 1890s, there were millions of farmers who belonged to alliances, which were pretty much organizations. However, similar to some of the workers in the industrial cities that we talked about previously, one thing that farmers also struggled was with uniting past racial or ethnic barriers. In the case of the farmers, it was less about ethnicity and language and religion, like you saw with the various immigrant groups in the cities. It was more about color. So, for example, the Colored Alliance was an all-black farmer alliance. And similarly, you had all white farmers alliances as well. So that inability to get past racial differences hindered the movement. There were also divisions with North and South, right? North and South. Still the wounds of the Civil War were still very much felt, and Northerners and Southerners, farmers especially, refused to work together with one another for that particular reason. And so this sort of the way of forming these, Grangers and forming these alliances were getting farmers to work together on a more local level. However, you had the emergence of just simple organizations to a full-blown political party. The Populist Party essentially becomes a farmers' political party. The two parties of the day, the Democrats and Republicans, were simply not meeting any of the demands of what the farmers wanted. And so the Populist Party, a third party, forms in the late 1800s as a response to really fight and pass laws on behalf of the farmers. The Omaha Platform, or otherwise known as the Populist Party Platform, outlined the demands of farmers. What did they want? Among their demands, of course, included things like silver. They wanted public, scroll down here, public ownership of railroads, right? Right, amongst other things, right, is what the farmers demanded in the Omaha Platform or the Populist Party Platform. It really came to represent what the populist was about, or what the populist movement was about, and really what they demanded. James Weaver was the first populist presidential candidate. Spelled wrong, whatever. The first populist presidential candidate, although he didn't win the presidential election, slowly but surely the Populist Party began electing local representatives, members to the House of Representatives, and it became an increasing political force that eventually the Democrats and Republicans would have to respond to this new political movement.